holds us to this earth, that holds the sun and the moon and the stars, that grows things into new expressions of being. We open this morning to that presence in our life as we bring awareness to our ways. And so we give thanks for this opportunity together to ask and receive, to seek and find, to knock, and to have new doors, new ways of being opened. For this sacred opportunity, we are truly grateful. And so in the name and in the nature of all that is holy, we give thanks. Thank you, God. And so it is. Amen. Again, this morning, I'm delighted to have with me Richard Schulman, our music director, on piano. And in the back, working on sound and video, we have Donna and Acela and Tia, so thank them. But we also want to thank each and every one of you for joining us from wherever you are. It's exciting to see people really around the globe joining together at different times watching our services. Today, I want to begin with the idea, I'm sure many of you have heard that expression, it's my way or the highway. It's my way or the highway. Really, a way of expressing that ultimatum, we'll take it or leave it. It's my way or the highway. Today, we're going to reframe that to create an opening. And so what we're talking about today is my way or the higher way. It's my way or the higher way. In order to kick it off, we have a video of a pre-recorded service. A number of you have said, I want to see our band and our congregation. I want to remember what it feels like when we're all in there. Well, I think that was a great suggestion. So our theme song by Eddie Watkins Jr., I Am the Place Where God Shows Up. Here's Cat Williams with our Unity Band.
Am I strong enough to bear the burden that sometimes come with living this thing called life? Am I wise enough to make the right decision when I'm standing at the fork in the road? Sometimes I wonder and ponder, only to realize I'm not alone and there's nothing I have to do on my own. Sing it with me! I am the place where God lives, moves and breathes and has its being. I am the place where God shows up. I am the place where God lives, moves and breathes and has its being. I am the place where God shows up. Will I have enough to do the things I need to do to take care of myself? Will I have the health of mind or body to live a life of grace and wholeness? Sometimes I wonder and ponder, only to realize I'm not alone and there's nothing I have to do on my own, because I am the place where God lives, moves and breathes and has its being. I am the place where God shows up. Sing it loud, sing it proud. I am the place where God lives, moves and breathes and has its being. I am the place where God shows up. breathes and has its being. I am the place where God shows up. This is where God shows up every day. I am the place where God lives, moves and breathes and has its being. I am the place where God shows up. I am the place. You are the place. We are the place where God shows up. I am the place. We are the place where God shows up. I am the place where God lives, moves and breathes and has its being. I am the place where God shows up. Yeah.
Don't you just love that? Sing it loud and sing it proud, as Kat always says. And I love seeing us all together and knowing that wherever you are hearing that I am the place where God is, moves and breathes and has its being. I am the place where God shows up. Oh, I am the place where God is, lives and breathes and has its being. I am the place where God shows up. Yeah. All right. We'll have some more music in a little bit, but I want to thank our band and thank all of you. So today, my way or the higher way? We're going to be talking about the idea that our current ways need not limit our potential or the greater good. That my current ways need not limit my potential or the greater good. That it's my way or the higher way. You know, we all have our unique ways. Donna came in this morning and was talking about a little 5-year-old nephew with such personality, already has his own little way. We all have our ways of interacting, of relating, our ways of seeing things and being things and doing things, our ways of getting information, and our way of showing up. And we certainly have our way, the way we want things to be. I know I do, and I know we all do. Perhaps more strongly in certain areas than others, but we all have our ways. Nonetheless, we can change our ways. I remember being in school, and as the summer would come to an end and it would be time for the next school year to begin, I really enjoyed that. And my sister and I, who are just 18 months apart, my mom we'd pick a day and she would take us into town and we'd get a few new school supplies. There was paper and maybe some binders, pencils or pens, whatever we needed, but we'd get a few school supplies for the upcoming school year. And then usually we'd grown enough that we would need a couple of new outfits, what she called our school clothes and our school shoes that we weren't supposed to play in the yard with and get all messed up. But we would prepare for the school year. But something that I recalled this week that my mom also, she used that as a great teaching opportunity. Because as we prepared for a new school year, she would remind us that this is an opportunity to do something in a new way. You know, you're starting a new school year, a higher grade. How do you want to show up in a new way? What habit, what do you want to do differently this year? And that was an incredible opportunity for me to really get at a young age that my current ways need not limit my potential. That last year's ways of being, last year's way of showing up, last year's way of doing things could also be upgraded. And it's an incredible reminder. the ways that we see the world, the way we interact, the way that we perhaps do things can also be upgraded. You know, sometimes, perhaps like that, we look forward to being able to learn and do things in a new way, make some changes. There's certainly other times when I know that we don't necessarily like the idea of needing to do something a new way. We may even have a lot of resistance around it. But we may realize, whether we like it or not, we need to make some changes and adapt a new way. It's like the Lakota saying, if you discover that the horse you are riding is dead, it's best to dismount and find a new way. That sometimes when the way is just no longer working, you realize, okay, it's run its course. It's time for me to find a new way. And there's a lot of times, far more than we realize, that our modus operandi, the way that we are operating, our ways of being, are such a part of the way we identify and we show up that we don't even realize that it is still our way. And that if we can become less identified and less attached to the ways that we're showing up, the way we see the world, the way we see these situations, we begin to create some space for higher ways, for our own growth and for positive evolution. And, you know, life has a way of making that happen. That sometimes a circumstance may change. Look at what's happening in our world right now. So many things that used to be the way of doing them, none of them are working anymore. Sometimes relationships change. People come in our lives, leave our lives. Our current capabilities may change. Opportunities may present themselves or may disappear. And like it or not, my way is no longer an option. It's an incredible reminder that impermanence is the nature of all forms. That's the bittersweet way of life, that this too shall pass. Those challenging things, yes, this too shall pass. Those wonderful things that I cherish and don't ever want to lose, this too shall pass. That impermanence is the nature of all form. And so it's a great way, it's a good opportunity to use this to look at, are my ways, am I holding them so tightly that I'm narrowing and constricting and being blinded really by my own ways? And how can I open and consciously stay open to notice when I am so stuck in just the way things are, I don't even realize I'm in a particular way? How do I open to have those paradigm shifts? How do I open to do things in a higher and greater way? Because again, my current ways need not limit my potential. My current ways or my current understanding need not limit the greater good that's available to me and to all. So we learn to be open and receptive. The scriptures, all different sacred texts, say this in very different ways. If we look in the book of Revelation, the last chapter in the Holy Bible, behold, I am making all things new. That's an active operating of spirit, the activity of spirit. Behold, I am making all things new. Meaning that, you know, I think about sometimes in my life, if there's a habit or something I can't break, I literally visualize myself placing it on the curb of my psyche, which I think of as my recycle space. You know how they come and they pick up our trash and recycle it, that all things are being made new. I am making all things new. It's an active principle that's operating in our life, and that our ways can be made new. And there's a way to align and to cooperate with that law. In the Old Testament, in the Hebrew Scriptures, Isaiah, it says, "For just as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than yours, and my thoughts higher than yours." Thomas Troward, a leader in the New Thought movement, said many years ago, the mind, or our awareness, is a center of divine operation. The divine operation is always for expansion and fuller expression. My mind, my awareness is a center of divine awareness, divine activity, divine operation. And the way the divine operates is it is always expanding and demonstrating fuller expression. That's what the Hubble telescope taught us, that our universe is expanding. And that's exciting when you really think about it, because it means that just like every plant or every tree, that we are seeded to bring forth more of our potential. And that as long as we are in this physical body, we know for sure that we have the opportunity to bring forth greater understanding, greater capabilities, and to shift continually, day by day, to die each day. The Apostle Paul said, I die daily, meaning every day I return to a beginner's mind, as our Buddhist friends would say. Every day is a new day and a new way. We can upgrade just like I did as a kid when I started a new school year. So some things to consider are, do your ways or your pursuits, do they include hate or harm? If how we're doing something includes hate and harm, I'd say there's a huge opportunity for a new way, a higher way. Do our ways, our pursuits, leave anyone out of God's presence? Do the ways that we see the world and engage the world and relate to one another, do they create better thans and less thans? Do they create some are worthy and some unworthy? Do they create some that we will bless and others that we will do whatever we want to? I think our world is being shaken to look at our ways. And if our ways include hatred or harm, if our ways are putting anyone outside of the blessing, the reverence, the respect for all of life, you can't hold your brother or sister in the darkness and hold your own self in the light. It just doesn't work that way. So to be mindful of what are those subtle ways where I am creating better thans and less thans, or seeing some people as outside of the love and as an expression of God. Where do my ways and my pursuits keep me and my identity, my capabilities small or narrow or limited? You know, when each of us started grade school, if we still had that same little lunchbox and that little poor pencil would be gone, but the things, the capabilities that we had, we certainly wouldn't expect ourselves all these years later to have had those exact same. We've evolved, we've grown. So how are our ways, our pursuits, keeping our identity, keeping us identified as small or narrow or limited, or keeping our capabilities at a static level, like, well, that's just the way it is, I can never change. So do our ways include hate or harm? Do our ways leave anyone outside of God's presence? Are they creating that better than, less than conundrum? Do our ways keep us identified as small or limited, or do they keep our capabilities as fixed? And do our ways and our pursuits resist change? Ugh, that's a big one. I've been thinking about that a lot lately as we look at our world and say, oh my gosh, it's like everything's going crazy. When is it going to stop? And then I remember how diligently we've been praying for change. And so, where are we resisting change? So where do our ways include hatred or harm? How do our ways leave anyone outside of God's presence? How do our ways keep us identified as small or our capabilities as limited? And how are we resisting change? You see, our current ways need not limit our potential or the greater good, our greater good. So the way that we begin to shift from my way to a higher way begins by the realization that we all have our ways. We could call it just like that little 5-year-old nephew that Donna was talking about. We have our own personality. And even though we grow and evolve, we still have our own ways. That's okay. Be aware of that. But you don't have to be identified by your ways only, and you don't have to be restricted or locked in. That just as we grow every day, our ways are meant to be flexible and to evolve. So we all have our ways, and then our ways are an expression of our will. And this is where we're leading today. You know, the word will, I've discovered, can be a trigger or a turnoff to a lot of people. And I think part of that reason is because many people have heard the idea of my will, free will, God's will, having a higher will opposed over mine. And I'm going to place that aside, and I want us approach it from this perspective, that we all have our ways, and our ways are an expression of our will. And let's just work with that simple yet profound truth, that our ways are an expression of our will. And now we go a step deeper, and that is that our will is meant to be in service to love. Because if God is love, if our will is meant to be in service to God, if our will is meant to be in service to the creative impulse, if our will is meant to be in service to our soul, to the highest and best, then our will is meant to be in service to love. And so we all have our ways. Our ways are an expression of our will. And as we begin to bring awareness to this, we realize that our ways and our will are meant to be in service to love at all times. And that our will also activates our higher potential, our higher self, a higher power, we could say. So we all have our ways. Our ways are an expression of our will. Our will is meant to be in service to love, to God, the good. And our will activates our higher power and potential. I remember as a kid occasionally watching the show All in the Family. Now, my parents really didn't allow us to watch that show, but if I was at somebody else's house, it was Edith and Archie Bunker, and Archie Bunker was kind of the rebel, and that wasn't allowed in our household. But I did watch it occasionally, and I ran across something this week that reminded me of Edith and Archie Bunker. There was a scene where Archie Bunker looks at his wife Edith and says, "Edith, I mean, you ain't even human." And Edith says, "Archie, that's a terrible thing to say." This is my terrible accent. "Archie, that's a terrible thing to say. I'm just as human as you are, Archie." And Archie looks at Edith and says, "Prove you're just as human as me. Do something rotten." And I thought about that, you know, misery does like company. And sometimes we don't even think about it. We just think, well, I'm just having my way. I'm just being, you know, whatever I want to be. But our will is always in service to something. Is it in service to being the devil's advocate? Is it in service to always being in somebody else's business? Is it in service to telling everybody else what they ought to be to do? Is it in service to love? Is it in service to constantly looking within and saying, how are my ways getting in my way? And how am I being called to open it up to a higher way, that my will and my way will be in service to love and to my soul's growth and development? There's a scripture in the Bible, or a sort of a story, that brings this point home in a metaphysical or a mystical way. In Unity, when we look at sacred texts, when we look at the Bible, we are looking at that as a journey from Adam consciousness, a consciousness that is separate and outside of the kingdom of heaven, if you will. From Adam consciousness, a journey to Christ consciousness at one-ment. And so when you look at the story in that mystical or metaphysical, beyond the physical, beyond the literal, but to look at it for its deep symbolic, how does it apply to me this day? How does it apply to every single person that's ever been on the face of the earth? And so we can relate it to our consciousness. When we look at the stories and the people and different aspects, we can use that to tell us something about our journey, our soul's growth. And so if we look at it through that lens, I want to look at the story of Saul of Tarsus, Saul that becomes better known as Paul. As Just a little bit about Saul from Tarsus. Saul was an individual that was, in the scriptures, he described himself as a Hebrew born of Hebrews, that he was born a Pharisee. He was a Jew that was zealous for the religious traditions of his ancestors. He obeyed the Hebrew scriptures to the letter. And he saw that as his calling. He believed with everything within him that that's what he was here to do. That things were changing. This rabbi named Jesus had come along, and people were starting to follow him, and they weren't following the kosher laws exactly as the Mosaic law had indicated that they should. And he was bypassing, this guy named Jesus was bypassing the priest, and he was praying for people himself, and he was teaching spiritual teachings to people. And so Saul from Tarsus, who worked for the Sanhedrin court, he worked for the ones that were there to hold the religious laws as they were in place. And so we could say today that he was sort of like a Hebrew hitman, that he was constantly hauling people back to Jerusalem, doing an intervention so that if they were starting to be followers of the way and they were deviating from the way they understood what was proper and spiritual and approved by God, he was hauling these people back into Jerusalem to re-educate them. And if they weren't cooperating, he was killing them. So he, of his own admission, says that he was the most passionate for killing those people that were followers of the way. He wanted to eliminate any threat to a new way. And so that's the backdrop that we have, and he's been doing this. And so one day he has papers in hand, and he's traveling on the road to Damascus with these warrants where he's looking for these renegade Jews, followers of the way. And so as he's going out to persecute these people and drag them back into Jerusalem to re-educate them, as the story goes, he's blinded by a light. And as he's blinded by a light, he's blinded. He cannot see, and he falls from his horse. And the story goes into quite a bit of detail, but over a number of days, he can't see. And in that state of not being able to see, something begins to shift inside of him. And in that same time of being blinded, he hears the words, "Saul, why are you persecuting me? Why are you beating against the rocks? Why are you persecuting me?" And Saul is thinking, who is this me that I'm persecuting? Why are you persecuting God? And he's saying, I'm not persecuting God. I'm going out and persecuting people who aren't following God. But you see, that's not our highest truth. There's harm and hurt. He had short-sighted vision. His will was a hurtful will. And so the story of Saul and being blinded by the light, Saul represents our personal will, and we all have one. And his personal will, he was very devout and very devoted. But ultimately, we are created to have that will in service to love. And he was literally being blinded by his narrow focus. He was being blinded by what he thought he had to do. But this spirit, if you will, divine intervention, something happens where he had a shaking wake-up call. And I believe that's what's going on now, that all of us have sort of been blinded and we can't see things the way they were, and we've got this chance and this wake-up call to say, are my ways really in service to love? What Saul began to realize as he was guided, he was only focused on his nation, his people, the old law. As the spirit of transformation began to work within his heart, he would be the great messenger that would go out to the Gentiles, the non-believers. He would be the one that would go out to all people. That he was being opened up, not just to see God here, but to see God everywhere he looked. And so each and every one of us have things that happen in our life. We may not be literally blinded by the light and fall off a horse for 3 days and have someone come and minister to us. It usually doesn't happen quite like that. Some people have that level of an experience. But if you're paying attention, you feel that when you know in your heart that is my will and my way Does it include hurt or harm? Is it leaving anyone out of God's presence? Am I locked into this better than, less than? Is it keeping my identity and my capabilities small and limited? Am I resisting change? That our way and our will is meant to be in service to love. In the 12-step program in Alcoholics Anonymous in the Big Book in AA, it says, lack of power. That was our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves. You see, that's where we begin to get into that when we activate our will, when we become mindful of what am I doing with my will, I'm not just coasting through my days. I may think I am, I may act like I am, I may try to be unconscious, but when we begin to bring awareness to that, what is my will in service to? We begin to activate a higher power. We begin to activate a dimension within ourselves that, as the 12-step book says, it's greater than ourselves. And you may say, well, how can I activate something in me that's greater than me? Well, that's because you're a non-physical being. That's because you're a multidimensional being. That's because your consciousness, your awareness is an expression of divine awareness, of divine mind. That's what the scriptures, when it says, I am that I am, before we were created, the spirit within us, your spirit is equipped and has access to whatever we need to upgrade to the next level. And so within each and every one of us, we have access to higher power, and it's through our will. Saul is one who is the personal will, totally focused on what they're doing. Paul, on the other hand, is a smaller self-will. It's to get the selfishness out of the way so that the greater expression, we all have our ways, we all have our wants and our desires, and it doesn't have to stop there. We don't have to get stuck there. I had kind of an aha around this when I lived in Maui. When I lived and worked on Maui, I was the minister at Unity of Maui for a while, and it was just a wonderful experience in so many ways. The minister who preceded me, Reverend Mary Omwake, she was personal friends with Ram Dass, the Ram Dass, yes. And so when I went to Maui, she was still on the island, I had the benefit of meeting him and going to his home and getting to know him a little bit. And he would attend our Unity Church on Maui and do things for the church and with the church at certain times. And I remember sitting in a place where he was talking to a group of people, and he told this story. He said, this is Ram Dass said, he said, when I first started meditating, I first started my spiritual practice, he said, I was so filled with anger and judgment and cravings and impatience. And he said, now after decades of meditation and prayer, I still have anger and judgment and cravings and impatience. And there was sort of a little audible gasp in the room, because I think everyone was wanting him to say, I have arrived. None of that stuff bothers me anymore. But he didn't. He said, after years of meditation and prayer, I still have anger and judgments and cravings and impatience. And then he said, but the difference is they don't have me. He said, they no longer possess me or define me. They no longer control my well-being or my sense of who I am. He said, like a river, we're all like a river, and many currents will flow through, and you will feel the currents of anger and impatience and craving and judgments, but they need not take possession of your river, for your river is connected to the mighty flow of life. And he said that even though I still have these things, they're far more fleeting, and that they don't have to be a source of suffering, and they don't have to lead me into ways that create suffering for other people. That's a mouthful. They don't have to lead me in ways that create suffering for other people. And he said the greatest shift came through my awareness. Through my awareness, I began to realize, yes, I have these things. All humans have these things, but they don't have me. I choose to open to a higher way and a higher will. You see, we all have a lot going on in our lives. We all have these human emotions, and they don't make us bad. We all have doubts. We all have fears. In the scriptures, I love doing the Christmas story every Christmas season because every angel, every character always begins with "fear not," which to me reminds us that we're all dealing with our fears. We're all dealing with our doubts. We're all dealing with these things. The difference is we don't have to bow to them. We don't have to let them stop us. We just keep walking knowing that they may be on the journey with us. But we stay open to a higher way. That's what Jesus meant when he said, not my way, not my will, but thy will. That I know that me, in and of my individual self, that at times I will get so lost, so frustrated, that I will think I can't do it. But I have access to the greater will. And that's the will that I want operating in my life. Richard, would you give me that song? When we begin to understand this, we realize that there's an orderliness in the world, and if we open to it and if we tap into this, the powerful things can happen. And to notice, where is there resistance in our life, and to begin to ask. This week I reached out to Reverend Deborah Marie Diamond, one of our members, and I have a lot of respect, and she's a quiet individual in some ways, but just does so much good work in the world. And I was asking her about divine order and personal will, and if she had anything she wanted to share. And Deborah Marie sent this. She said, after she attended ministerial school, she founded and opened Circle of Life Center, a spiritual healing and education center, and their tagline was inner healing for global transformation. And she said she started with a Thursday evening talk, but soon more and more people were coming, and they wanted to become a church with Sunday services. She resisted. She said, I did not want this. I did not want a church because I had some baggage around the term. But she was realizing some resistance. And she was very aware of her will, because ultimately her will is, use me. Let me be an instrument of divine healing and light and love. And you see, the universe is always making room for your gifts. The universe is always nudging you into the greater becoming and expressing of all that you are. And so she said that as people were wanting a church and she didn't, so she asked for higher guidance. She said, so I asked divine consciousness for a sign. Well, the very next day, a man called who I didn't even know, and he asked if I performed weddings. I said yes. And I thought, okay, universe, one sign's not enough for me, so if I'm supposed to open a church, I need another sign. The very following day, a woman called and said, would she officiate a funeral for her brother? She said, well, that's just a coincidence, Spirit. I still, if you want me to open a church, I need another one. She's already got two. Very next day, third day, still determined not to become a church. She said, okay, I need another sign. The next day, a woman called and asked if she would baptize her son. She said she literally laughed and said, okay, divine consciousness, weddings and funerals and baptisms, the things that churches do. Okay, I get this. I hear you. These are three of the main ministerial sacraments. I surrender to the divine order. And it became a church. You see, we don't always know why we're being nudged. But in every experience, you can choose to respond in an evolving way. I am asking each and every one of you, will you take possession of your will, awareness of your will, and will you choose to respond in an evolving way, a higher and better way? That we all have our ways. Our ways are an expression of our will. Our will is meant to be in service to love, to God. And our will activates this higher power to begin to work through us, where we become the way. I know with everything in my bones that's what's happening now. And so will you join me in being mindfully aware of your will and being the way of greater good? There's a song that I learned in the Pentecostal church growing up, and it just, to me, it really puts the stamp on this message, and it goes like this. I'm pressing on the upward way, new heights I'm gaining each and every day, still praying as I'm onward bound. Lord, plant my feet and my consciousness on higher ground. Lord, lift me up and let me stand by faith on heaven's stable land, a higher plane than I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. As we close our eyes and turn our awareness within, we plant our awareness in a higher field. We center our awareness in a place that is beyond this individual self, and yet certainly includes and contains all that I am. But we center our awareness in that field that Rumi called out beyond all ideas of right doing or wrongdoing. There's a place, and I will meet you there. It is a place that is beyond my way or your way, for it is the place. It is the state of pure being. As we bring mindfulness to our ways and the willfulness that is activating those ways of being, we engage higher capabilities. As we bring awareness to our ways and to the willingness that is activating those ways of being, we engage a higher power and a higher presence. As we honestly say, yeah, this is how I feel, this is what I'm doing, this is the way I see it, and I am open. I am here to be an instrument for good, for greater good. The things that once blinded us begin to create new spiritual understanding. Bring awareness this week to help me to see where my ways and my will are harmful or hurtful to me or to anyone. Help me to become aware to where my ways and my will are caught up in this better than, less than, ego competition. Some are blessed, some are good, some are evil. Because we're not talking about their actions, we're talking about the being. Help me to notice where I have identified, self-identified in such a way that I'm stuck, I'm limited, I'm fixed. Or where I have come to see my capabilities as that's it, that's all I'm going to have in that area. Well, where is there a bypass going on that's going to somehow blossom even around it and through it? And where in my life am I resisting? My way and my will. May I be in service to love. May I become the way, the channel in this world, a channel for love and light and healing and restoration. Oh, you need to say yes at that soul level, for our world needs you. Our world has planted you right where you are, for what appears to be in the way is the way. Anything that appears to be in the way is the way to create the opening for the higher power, higher ways of being to flow through. So we give thanks for this ever-abiding, ever-transforming, ever-upgrading presence in which we live and move and have our being, in which we are expressing. So my heart has no desire to stay where doubts arise and fear dismay, though some may dwell where these abound. My prayer, my aim is higher ground. So you lift me up, so I will stand by faith on heaven. Holy land, a higher way may I become. Love plant my feet on higher ground. My current ways need not limit my potential nor the greater good. Thank you, Richard. And thanks to each and every one of you for being with us today. If you're in this area, in the Mills River area, swing by the church. The church is closed, but just drive through the parking lot, see the construction going on. It's pretty exciting to do that. We are also monitoring, working with the Center for Disease Control and our insurance company, a number of different places to open when we safely can. Right now, with the numbers still continuing to climb, we're going to wait a little bit more, but we're also exploring the possibility of doing something outside. So we'll certainly keep you updated on that, and just know that we're chomping at the bit, just like some of you may be, to get back as soon as we can. I also want to thank you for your ongoing support, your gift of tithes, of offerings. If everyone does what they can, as often and whenever you can, it's going to work. It is working. So I really want to thank you for that. Two things as we wrap up today. Our board president, Ellen Winter, and her donkeys. We have a new video for you we want to show. And then Cat Williams and our Unity Band is going to wrap it up with a better way. So may you have a wonderful week as we all open to being the way for better ways. Blessings to you, my friend.
Hi, I'm Ellen Winter here with the donkeys today, still in their holiday finery, celebrating the 4th of July. Today we're going to read The Wonky Donkey. I was walking down the road and I saw a donkey. Aww. But he only had 3 legs. He was a wonky donkey. I was walking down the road and I saw a donkey and he only had 3 legs and 1 eye. He was a winky wonky donkey. I was walking down the road and I saw a donkey. He only had 3 legs, 1 eye, and he liked to listen to country music. Yee-haw! He was a honky-tonky winky wonky donkey. I was walking down the road and I saw a donkey. He only had 3 legs, 1 eye. He liked to listen to country music and he was quite tall and slim. He was a lanky, hunky-tonky, winky, wonky donkey. I was walking down the road and I saw a donkey. He only had 3 legs, 1 eye. He liked to listen to country music. He was quite tall and slim and he smelled really, really bad. He was a stinky, dinky, lanky, honky-tonky, winky, wonky donkey. I was walking down the road and I saw a donkey. He only had 3 legs, 1 eye. He liked to listen to country music. He was quite tall and slim. He smelt really, really bad. And that morning he got up early and hadn't had any coffee. He was a cranky, stinky, dinky, lanky, honky-tonky, winky, wonky donkey. I was walking down the road and I saw a donkey. He only had 3 legs, 1 eye. He liked to listen to country music. He was quite tall and slim. He smelled really, really bad. That morning he got up early and hadn't had any coffee, and he was always getting up to mischief. He was a hanky-panky, cranky, stinky, dinky, lanky, honky-tonky, winky, wonky donkey. I was walking down the road and I saw a donkey. He only had 3 legs, 1 eye. He liked to listen to country music. He was quite tall and slim. He smelled really, really bad. That morning he had got up early and hadn't had any coffee. He was always getting into mischief, but he was quite good looking. He was a spunky, hanky-panky, cranky, stinky, dinky, lanky, honky-tonky, winky, wonky donkey. I was walking down the road and I saw a donkey. Here's a good-looking donkey.
Sunset lightning in my bones. Push me to the edge, but my will is stone. Because I believe in a better way. Fools will be fools and wise will be wise. But I look at this world, I look it straight in the eyes. Because I believe in a better way. Oh yes, I believe in a better way. What good is the man who won't take a stand? What good is a cynic with no better plan? I believe in a better way. Yes, I believe in a better way. Find a way to make it a better way. I believe in a better way. I feel it coming. Oh, I say